What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to SideNote News, where we break down real stories with real context, news, culture, politics, and everything in between. Right now, we are talking about a major shift in U.S. trade policy after a U.S. Supreme Court decision struck down part of President Donald Trump's tariff agenda, and how Trump is doubling down with now new global import taxes, sharply criticizing the justices as he moves forward. This story has economic, legal, and international implications, and we'll break them down all for you today. Last Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court, they delivered a 6-3 decision rejecting the broad global tariffs that Trump had imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or known as the IEEPA. That's a law that originally was designed for national emergencies, not sweeping trade duties.
Trump's tariff tax was illegal, and the courts agreed. And let's call these tariffs for what they are: a tax on the American people.
The court ruled that unilateral tariff powers belong to Congress, not the president. The ruling underscored the constitutional separation of powers and immediately invalidated much of Trump's tariffs program aimed at nearly all U.S. trading partners. That decision alone, it affected tariffs that had generated tens of billions in federal revenue and stood as a signature pillar of Trump's trade agenda through his second term. Now, Trump's reaction to this, of course, he was angry. At a White House press conference following the ruling on Friday, Trump expressed fury at the Supreme Court. He called the decision shameful, saying that certain justices lacked the courage to do what's right for our country.
I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country.
He even suggested, without evidence, that the court had been influenced by foreign interest. He even told several of the judges that their own families should be ashamed of them. He singled out justices, including some of his own appointees, who sided against him, a rare and startling public rebuke of the judiciary from a former president.
I know the people that brought the lawsuit, and, they're sleazebags, major sleazebags. Foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years are ecstatic. They're so happy. And they're dancing in the streets, but they won't be dancing for long. They're just being fools and lapdogs for the rhinos and the radical left Democrats.
But Trump didn't just stop at criticism. He quickly pivoted to new action. Within hours of the Supreme Court ruling, Trump announced a new global tariff of 10%, all on imported goods into the United States, invoking a different trade law known as Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing. The good news is that there are methods, practices, statutes, and authorities, as recognized by the entire court in this terrible decision, and also as recognized by Congress, which they refer to, that are even stronger than the IEEPA tariffs available to me as President of the United States. Therefore, effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs, they're existing, they're there, remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122, over and above our normal tariffs already being charged.
This provision permits tariffs of up to 15% without immediate congressional approval for up to 150 days when there are large and serious balance of payment issues. Then, just one day later, on Saturday, Trump raised that global tariff rate to 15%, the maximum allowed under Section 122, and he said it would take effect immediately. Here's where it gets complicated. Tariffs work as taxes on imports, theoretically making foreign goods more expensive and encouraging U.S. production. But economists and global trade partners warn higher tariffs often lead to higher consumer prices, supply chain disruption, foreign retaliation, and economic uncertainty. Already, business groups have expressed concern, saying American companies, not foreign producers, typically shoulder these tariff costs through higher production expenses, which can be passed on to consumers. Additionally, foreign leaders, including European and Asian officials, have warned that raising tariffs could further escalate trade tensions, pressuring global markets that are already shaky. When we look at the legal landscape and the institutional clash, Trump's tariff saga has become a flashpoint in the battle over executive versus legislative power when it comes to U.S. trade policy. The Supreme Court's their ruling has emphasized that imposing sweeping tariffs is Congress's role, not the president's. Yet Trump's use of Section 122, a rarely invoked statute, and threats of other tariff authorities like Section 301 or Section 232, they signal a strategy to work around judicial limits without seeking broad congressional authorization. This maneuver has generated pushback not only from Democrats, but also from some Republican senators who say the decision upholds constitutional checks and balances on presidential power. Now let's talk about the global trade impact. Tariffs at 15% on goods from all countries means countries exporting to the U.S. from Europe to Asia, they will face sustained or increased barriers to American markets. And many exporters say such broad-based tariffs could provoke retaliation, leading to a cycle of punitive duties on American products abroad, something economists warn could hurt U.S. workers and farmers who rely on export markets. The bottom line is the Supreme Court struck down Trump's tariff authority as unconstitutional and reaffirmed Congress's role in trade policy. Trump responded by imposing new global tariffs under alternate legal authority, starting at 10% and then quickly rising within 24 hours to 15%. This move places new taxes on most imports, signaling a continuation of aggressive trade strategy despite legal setbacks. Economists, lawmakers, and global partners are watching very closely as the economic impact could ripple through markets, supply chains, and international relations. This isn't just about trade policy. It's about executive power, constitutional limits, and how far a president can push economic policy without congressional backing, even in the face of a major judicial setback. We'll continue to follow this story as new rulings, market data, and legislative responses unfold. This is SideNote News, breaking down real stories with real context. We'll see you next time.